So welcome to Curator Conversations, a monthly series where we'll ask a local curator or arts organizer to pick an artist that they enjoy chatting with. We're thrilled to collaborate with DePaul Art Museum for this conversation between DePaul's assistant curator, Ionit Behar, and artist Rodrigo Lara, who also has work up in DePaul's current exhibition, LatinXAmerican, which currently features 38 Latinx artists from the Chicagoland area and beyond. To go quickly into their bios, and I know they'll keep talking about their work and their practices, but Ionit Behar is assistant curator at DePaul Art Museum, or DPAM, and teaches art history at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Prior to joining DPAM, she was the curator of collections and exhibitions at Spertus Institute for Jewish Learning and Leadership, a research assistant for the exhibition Hélio Oiticica to organize Delirium at the Art Institute of Chicago, and a graduate curatorial assistant at Gallery 400 at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Her writing has appeared in exhibition catalogues and art journals such as Field, a journal for socially engaged art criticism, the Chicago Reader, The Scene, and the Exhibitionist. Born in Israel and raised in Uruguay, Behar is a Ph.D. candidate in art history at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and her dissertation is entitled Intimate Space in the Public Sphere, Margarita, Paksa, and Argentina's Military Dictatorship. Rodrigo Lara is born in Mexico, is a Chicago-based artist who received an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and his BFA from the Universidad de Guanajuato. Lara has had solo exhibitions in institutions such as the Hyde Park Art Center in Chicago, the National Museum of Mexican Art, Kruger Gallery in Marfa, Texas, and test site projects in Las Vegas, among others. He has been in residencies such as the Vermont Studio Center, Acre, Ragdale, Mana, Miami, Rogers Art Loft, and Cross Currents Cultural Exchange. Lara has received numerous awards, including an emerging artist grant from the Joan Mitchell Foundation. I know I'm very excited to have you all here this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone in our audience, don't forget that we do have a chat function. So feel free to pop any questions that you might have throughout the conversation into that chat box. That is all from me. I will hand it over to Ionit.
Thank you so much. Thank you to 21C Chicago and to Adia Sykes for inviting me to be part of Curator Conversations and for partnering with DPAM. And also special thanks to Rodrigo Lara for accepting and being in dialogue with me today. It's been a real pleasure to know Rodrigo and his practice for the past 10 years, I think. We met in graduate school at the School of the Art Institute, and we both stayed in Chicago since then. And I've been a fan of your work, Rodrigo, and I'm very excited to discuss your work today. As Adia said, we want to make sure that we leave time for your questions and comments. So we'll be in conversation with you all in a little bit. And also I was saying to Rodrigo that right before we went on that we have to kind of switch to English since we're generally used to talk with each other in Spanish. So I hope we don't do too much Spanglish, but we'll see. So Rodrigo, maybe you want to start sharing the screen when you're ready.
Yes. There you go.
Great. So as Adia mentioned, Rodrigo's work is currently on view at DPAM in the exhibition LatinXAmerican, where we have 38 Latinx artists, in which more than half of the artists are based in Chicago, but we also include artists from other parts of the US and Puerto Rico. And just a few weeks ago, we opened to the public after being closed for more than a year. So if you're in Chicago, please come visit us and see LatinXAmerican. So you can go to the next slide, Hélio. So LatinXAmerican is on 2 floors of the museum, on is occupying the whole museum. And on the second floor, which is the image on the right, the first thing you see are Rodrigo's works. And as I refer to them, or as I think Rodrigo also refers to them, they're Rodrigo's memorials. His works are right next to, you can go to the next slide. Yes, also the next slide. Your works are right next to the works by artist Graciela Iturbide, which is a work from DPAM's collection. And it's a photograph that depicts a young girl that's celebrating her first Holy Communion, which is a Catholic ceremony commemorating Christ's sacrificial death. And the girl is in a cemetery. And I don't know if you can see well in the image, but the picture, the girl is wearing a skeletal mask. And the way that it's photographed is also kind of obscuring her face. And like Rodrigo, Graciela Iturbide is also a Mexican artist, a photographer. And like Rodrigo as well, she's dealing, both of them are dealing with the topic of death, ritual, and religion in a way that it also relates to their own personal experiences and biographies. So I just wanted to bring this example to sort of get us started in the conversation, which I think is very relevant and very different also in the way that you, Rodrigo, deal with these topics. So if we go to the next image, and I thought that before we talk about the works at DPAM specifically, Rodrigo, maybe you can start from the beginning. And I think, it's fair to say that you make figurative sculptures and that you mostly work with clay. So I think, I wanted to kind of make those statements for people to have a basic understanding of your practice. So I would like to start talking about these three choices of yours: sculpture, figuration, and clay, or instead of clay we can also say ceramic. But can you talk about these three areas, and if you even see them as choices, or do you feel that they are kind of essential forms for your practice, for being? I kind of sometimes see them as so part of yourself, like you can't work with with something else, like it's essential. So I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Ionit, and thank you everyone to attend today. And I mean, special thanks to 21C and DePaul Art Museum. No, thank you for organizing this and having me and Ionit as guests. So, but yeah, I'm happy to share with you guys some images of my early years or early interests. And in this case, I mean, I'm the person standing in the middle between my two older brothers. And a lot of my work refers to this idea of memorialization, no? And one clear influence was by growing in a very Catholic family, no? And even being an altar boy. I think this picture was taken weeks before I became also an altar boy, just like my siblings and other friends. And I mean, as you can see on the back, there's this bottom section of a virgin made out of wood and almost like floating outside of the wall, no? So many of the saints that were displayed either in this church or other churches where I was also altar boy definitely made an impact on my work, not just because of the idea of religion or figuration, but basically this idea of memorialization, you know, like how saints, according to their actions in life, became memorialized after all these years. No, I mean, besides the Holy Family and everything else that it's there, no. But so that's on one side, and then on the other side, I grew up a block away from the municipal cemetery in the city of Querétaro. So I used to spend a lot of time in this cemetery with my friends, with my siblings, I think especially the group of altar boys that we used to use it as a headquarters and just run around the space. I mean, in Mexico, you are not so afraid of venues like this to begin with the Day of the Dead, no? Like it's a few days that people are invited and welcome to assist to this place and hang out, really, no? So it's not that spooky thing that maybe Hollywood or other cultures might feel rejected to this. And I was always excited or you know, like observing how each of these tombs become memorial to each of the people, each of the persons that are buried in there, no? So both ideas were important to me, you know, like the figures I will see in church, but also these memorials in the church, no? I mean, in the cemetery. And I mean, that sort of opened my path or line of investigation or thinking in order to go farther behind, no? Like what has happened in humanity over 2,000 years, no? Or way to think of figuration or memorials or religion, no? And so I found out all this figurative sculpture that at the same time is zoomorphic, and there's this lion head man that was found in Ulm, Germany, and it's about 40,000 years old, no? So 38,000 years older than Jesus and all the idea of the Catholicism. So that idea was fascinating to me, you know, like from early moments of humans, this need or feeling of believing in something else, no? Like anything that we cannot explain, we as humans tend to find other explanations, no? From by making up gods or thinking there's something else that controls whatever we don't understand. I mean, in that case, this lion man head was made out of mammoth ivory. And then I also was investigating after I was able to hold and examine this about 2,000, 1,500-year-old ceramic pieces that I was able to analyze and grab in my hands. No, so I was observing them, how the pieces of clay were put together, and you know, thinking how a person was holding it in the same way I was holding it, either the functional or the sculptural objects. And so that made me think, like, wait, what's the oldest ceramic piece that has been found? No, so this is that piece, is the Venus of Dolní Věstonice, and that's in a museum near where it was found in Eastern Czech Republic in Brno. So I mean, again, the idea of figuration is there, and the beauty of it, no, and the stylization as well, no. And then you will see oftentimes in my work that I overlap different faces, no, that many times people think there are emojis, that I'm trying to do something like, you know, catchy and funny, as we have been using for the last decade or decades, no. But actually, like lines or you know, minimal faces describing almost like emojis that way. Like, for example, this was found in Australia, no, and it's about 10,000 years old, and so these faces are often related to, I mean, according to the other gestures they have found in these caves, that were depictions of gods as well, no, like these early lines and just having them larger than life size in comparison to the rest of the things, no. So I was also fascinated by that, no. So in a way, this is a connection of these ideas in the series I have been working on, that is called Ephemeral Memorials, in which I'm using similar materials to those found in Mexican cemeteries, or I mean, other countries as well, no, that many times reuse materials, no, the title Ephemeral Memorials comes because in this municipal cemetery in Mexico, for example, those pieces are actually, or those tombs are ephemeral, like they have 15, 20 years of existence, and then they have to be emptied and then rented to someone else. No? So the way that people are remembering someone is this, let's say, new portraits or physical evidence that somebody lived. It also has an end. No, so it's this rotation that we inherited from Spain, no? In this kind of cemeteries. So the same way the materials might not last as long. No, for example, I have been using this astroturf or different kinds of plants, plastic plants, no, that are often used in these cemeteries. Same way, combined with different ceramic tiles or marble tiles.
And Rodrigo, can I ask you, so like you grew up next to a cemetery, I imagine. Well, I want to hear how were your visits there and if you can recall any particular experience, but also, I mean, and then I also would love to hear the difference of experiencing a cemetery, either that one or another. Now, these works are very recent from the past few years. So just going back to your childhood experiences of living near a cemetery versus now, that differences, if there are different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, we will spend a lot of time there, no? When I was even younger, behind the cemetery, there was a soccer field. I mean, even though I didn't really play soccer, but we will play other games there. And this was a field made out of like soil. It wasn't grass or anything as you could imagine, but it was like really basic. And it was almost the end of the city back then towards that section. I mean, the city has developed and changed so much. There are like now hotels and other things, and like car dealerships in all those sections that there used to be nothing, no? So going to the cemetery was almost like a place where we could even run around, but like also observe a lot of people visiting their family members or friends, no? And since my family moved to Querétaro, we didn't have at the beginning any family members in that city, no? So in a way, it was also like trying to connect with these people that somebody missed, but I could not see any family related connections in there, no? Mm-hmm. And I mean, now I don't live near the cemetery here in Chicago, but there are several spaces like this, no? And I mean, the US is very different, that most of the tombs look very much alike, or they look very different, but that's usually people who are extremely wealthy, no? They build like really big.
Is that how you work now? Do you feel like you need to go to sites like the cemetery to then go to your studio and make the work, or do you work from photographs or just from memory?
Not really. I mean, it's been more like this connections to these pieces are after photographs I took from different churches that I used to be an altar boy in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And it's been more like revisit them now that I have been, I mean, within the last 10 years since I moved here, no? I probably took these photos of these pieces maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, these 3 pieces are now on the show, but I have made others just with the same idea, no? And again, overlapping these faces mm-hmm. on top by using sort of elements that the sculptures already had, and then inventing other things. No? And one thing I would like to mention is that many times these pieces are also part of a process, or this idea I've been thinking a lot of the process of becoming, no? And in this case, this could also, or they work also as sketches for, I would love to make these pieces like life size. So sometimes they are, you know, like elements of this process into becoming into something else, no? Like almost like us as humans, no? Like we're always trying to become something else, no? So many times
little steps until you take a bigger step.
Exactly, because I mean, many years I will have like drawings or little 3D sketches, and I will even throw them in the garbage, no? Like I will never think of them as anything else, but
don't
like,
throw anything to the garbage.
I know. Yeah, so I think for the last several years I have been doing the opposite of this, no? Like even some lithographs I was working on a couple of years ago in Vegas came from drawings after these three pieces, actually, no? So first the lithograph happened, and then I made like a little composition or collage similar to the lithographs, but different, and then the sculptures happen, no? So instead of having them backwards, this was the order, and hopefully others will happen, no? But I don't know if you want to move to the next series, because then we'll see pictures of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I want to keep talking about these works, but also in relationship to your earlier project, The Portable Aliens, specifically about what I think, well, both I think are about satire, or they have satire in them. And by satire, I mean, you know, your use of humor to reveal some sort of social, political criticism that might draw attention to a particular issue, or an issue that is about our society. Would you agree with that? Do you think about these having humor, and if you can think of other artists? I'm curious to hear other contemporary artists that you feel that are using satire with your similar objective.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I do reference different things, no? I think satire, for sure, it's something that characterizes I mean, Mexicans, but also Latin American countries, so on many other countries too, that I feel like many times by not being able to fix things, or knowing that things will never change, instead of people, I mean, besides trying to do something or speak up, many countries also tend to use satire as a way, or almost like a armor, in order to survive in these hostile situations, no? Or these difficult moments. And in this particular case, I was referencing Franz Xaver Messerschmidt and his idea of physiognomy, no? And I mean, I will just mention that this series was referencing the 1930s repatriation program during Hoover and Roosevelt, in which about 1 million Mexicans were repatriated, or more like deported, and then about 60% of them were U.S. nationals, no? So this is not something new. This many times my work also refers to that, to these historical moments that keep happening, keep repeating, and this idea of us as humans as being our own enemies in different ways, no? But yeah, going back to those ideas, I think maybe Los Carpinteros could be another example of using satire to speak about political situations, no, or things related to that. But I mean, in this case, many times people think that these are just like whimsical, funny, or joker characters, but at the end they're just or cartoonish even, no? But so these are partial portraits of present day immigrants, no? At the time I met them in Chicago, most of them Mexicans, but just like this repatriation program was not only attacking or, you know, like forcing Mexicans out of the country, also South Americans, Europeans, Asians were also forced to leave, no? So I use about the same percentage of the people who were participating in this project as immigrants. and making these partial portraits, no? But by removing sections or forcing these features to fit in the thumbprint of these thumbs, automatically, like, your brain tells, like, this is more like a joke, no? Even though those gestures were like as accurate as I could make them, no? To the people I was making the portrait, no? So there are just like sections or fractions.
Right. Yeah, there's something really uncomfortable about this work, and I think the satire plays differently in the Saints than in this one, and maybe it is because of the scale. Maybe if the Saints were, you know, in how you were saying, in that step where they're life size and larger, maybe that would have a similarity in the satire. But yes, definitely uncomfortable in. So if you don't mind, Rodrigo, if we talk also about the other work you have at DPAM, the Untitled 2 from the Paradiddle series.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I just want to mention real quick, like, this is other pieces I have made for the same bodies of work. You can see little saints here. I don't know if you can see my arrow. But so these are other pieces within the same series, but then presented here more like a installation, no?
Yes, so in these ones you include, well, you still very much keep doing figurative sculpture, but now there's another element, the musical, like percussion instruments. And I think, you know, as we keep seeing the different projects, I feel like we know fragments of your biography as well, which I know that you were in a music band in Mexico, right? And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about that part of your being and the inclusion of these musical instruments in the sculptures.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so there are other elements that are included. Like, I mean, in this series, we already spoke about the faces or mixing these animal parts into figurative pieces, no? Making that reference to the lion-headed man. And I mean, the color of the clay in contrast with the porcelain, all these black pieces connect to this Venus of Dolny Vestonice, no? Like, I'm making almost like fake old pieces, no? I have never seen it in person. I hope to get to see it soon, also through a John Mitchell Foundation grant I got just before the pandemic. So this trip has been postponed. But yeah, so using elements of drums or music have been important to me. Often I put the symbols near the head of pieces, no, making a reference to halos, no. And I've been making this connection of like an average song that usually lasts about 5 minutes. If you would compare 5 minutes to 40,000 years, the time that it'll take a drum stroke, which is about a second and a half, or this is about the same time we will be present while being in this world, no? So thinking then of a symbol that would last for 10, 15, 20 seconds, it's more like people who can be memorialized and remember for a longer time. Also, these are the
what you mentioned earlier, right? No, these are not the lithographs.
These are the lithographs, yeah.
Okay.
So the drawings, as you can see, these pieces have symbols and drums, but the sculptures at DPAM do not have that yet, no? Like, as thinking of this again as sketches for this, no? So that's the connection, no? And sort of analyzing different materials, no? That and how they translate to the print.
Yeah, these very much look like plans for installations or larger scale.
And so that's an example of a life-size piece, no? That that would be my idea to make them eventually, with a similar idea, no, of the piece. So this is after it was finished, and of course the other one was during the
Where
process.
was this shown?
This was shown a couple of times, once at 6018 North.
Okay.
And then the second time at Chicago Art Department. And so that's the other piece that is also at the LatinXAmerican show. And so for this body of work, again, I'm thinking of this idea of the body and how the body is almost like a container, no? After holding this old ceramic pieces in my hands, no? All these series do not have heads, no? It's all about the body. And basically these pieces, I mean, I'm talking just at this ceramic area here, start from a classical looking pose or working from a live model. And after that, I cut the piece, no, like hollow it out and reassemble it in different ways, no. So even though this starts from a classical looking pose that probably has been done hundreds of times or something similar, maybe thousands of times, no, during the course of art history, how by cutting it and assembling in different ways gives me the opportunity to make like endless possibilities of this connections, no? And so this series is called paradiddle, or the pieces that do not have drums or drumsticks or animal stalls. That series is called polyrhythms, no? Which is in often used in music terminology as a conflict of rhythms, no? Or overlapping of rhythms, no? And I'm thinking of how us as humans, we tend to intending to destroy ourselves, but also to regenerate ourselves, no? It's this endless self-destruction, but also trying to save humanity at the same time, no? And so I'm thinking of these ideas by making these compositions with the body, no?
Yeah. Yeah, and when you say it's all about the body, and I'm quoting you there, which I love that you say that, and I want to move to the next question, which is about more of your spatial work and your installations, and one of my favorite works of yours, which is the chapel. And someone that makes sculptures like yourself, someone that thinks and works with and about the body and its relationship to space, it seems like installations are really a natural part of your practice, or at least that's how it feels with chapel specifically. So can you tell us about this installation, chapel, and in which you created what it looks like a skeleton of a chapel? And important is to say that the chapel is inside the museum or inside an exhibition space, right? You showed this first at, I think the first time you showed it at Expo Chicago, right? But still, I mean, not a place where you would expect to find it.
Definitely, yeah. So for this particular piece, I mean, the first time was shown was at Expo Chicago, but it was also, I mean, the piece was made for the specific space of 6018 North, responding to the space, no? So the height of the piece is exactly as tall as the two rooms where the piece was, and the space between the bases where the saints or the figurative sculptures are standing on, it's also like the space that would have between window to window, no? And again, it was a way of me to reconnect to this religious background I had, or altar boy. And then eventually I also played drums for the same, not the same, but I mean, in the same church where I was an altar boy, once I grew up, I played drums there. And So that was my connection to this particular space. That show at 1618 North was a satellite exhibition during the first Chicago Architecture Biennial. So by that, I was referencing a building in Chicago, St. James Chapel. So that's where the reference comes from, the rib vault, no? And by that, St. James Chapel is a copy of a chapel in Paris. It's Sainte Chapelle, or excuse my French. And so in a way, I'm making a copy of an original, no? And in this case, this saints or the bodies are referencing Michelangelo, Bernini, Carpo. And then after a performance or a collaboration, people were asked after their favorite artists or the artists they will reference their practice. And so the answers, or the top answers, were the saints or artists I made the portraits, no? For instance, this is Andy Warhol holding Basquiat, no, as Jesus. And there are other artists in these 12 pieces surrounding the inside of the chapel, no? Again, as a contrast, as I was showing with the ephemeral memorials and also paradiddle pieces, no, like the contrast between the strength of ceramic, I mean, porcelain is probably even stronger since it's fire higher, but so at least it could last 27,000 years old, no? Just like the Venus of Dolny Bestonici I was showing you earlier, in contrast with other materials that I overlapped. For example, the MDF bases. I mean, this is metal that is holding this casted fragments or sections of polyurethane foam, which of course are gonna start fading or disappearing over the years, no? So these are other views of these pieces, no? And I mean, there are different layers of comparing Catholicism with contemporary art to me. Like one of them could be, once probably I stopped going to church as much or at all, then when you go to art openings or events, it's very similar how people say hello, give hugs, talk about the show instead of talking how the preach of the day was, no? It's almost like another religion, no? So this is like Ana Mendieta, for example, and Marcel Duchamp.
Yeah, this work is fantastic, and I think it has to be installed somewhere permanently. It's one of my favorite projects. But I want to make sure that we have time to talk about the next project. And also these next projects that we'll talk about are your previous work, in which you referenced more directly, more explicitly, immigration, especially the conditions of Mexican immigrants in the US. I was particularly interested in this work that we're seeing here, the contraband work titled Clay Traffic, in which you packed clay in a very suspicious way, inserted in your luggage when you traveled from Mexico to the US. You then used this clay and combined it. So you combine the Mexican clay, which is basically Mexican soil, with North American clay. So about this work, I was thinking it very much is a border art, you know, speaking to works such as the work by the Chicano artist Guillermo Gómez Peña, for example. And I was wondering if there are other artists. This is very much a performance, you know, even though you then make this, which becomes sculptures, but the actual clay traffic is very much a performance. So I was wondering if there are other artists, border, making work about the border, that you were thinking about making this work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was thinking a lot about Aníbal López, and he will speak a lot about illegal economy, no? And some of his performances also was by trafficking, in his case, empty boxes through the border, no? And he was a Guatemalan artist, passed away, I think, 2016. And yeah, so this project was made in 2012, 2013. This is one of the lumps of clay. There was 10 kilograms of clay powder, either flown from Mexico City to Chicago or through the border between Ciudad Juárez and El Paso. No? So the poetic of the materials was important to me. As you mentioned, the connection of the two bodies of clay or the two lands, thinking or connecting the drug war and the connection of the profit of the two countries. No, while Mexico provides and sells drugs and or traffics them from other countries, the U.S. resells them and makes, of course, as much profit. But once it crosses the border, nobody speaks about that. And so this is one of many ways how cartels dismember and kill people, displaying them in public spaces. So these are all pieces life-size or larger than life-size. That's one of the ways to consider a memorial sculpture, no? Having those.
I want to talk about this work, but the clay traffic, though, when you installed it, which I think it's at Sullivan Galleries, you had some audio component to it. What was the audio there?
Exactly. Yeah. So the audio was me telling this performance I was doing, and even explaining a little or a lot how the drug war started in Mexico, no, and what was happening at the time, and basically speaking and like you will hear it in one side in Spanish, one side in English, no, just like the clay mixing the two languages. So if you will speak both languages, you could sort of follow both, but if not, it could be sort of confusing and even annoying, no? So people many times had to remove one side or the other, in a similar way to not want to read or think about this topics, no, happening at the time.
So with this one, dismembered bodies and the clay traffic, as well as your other immigration works, have you shown them in Mexico or even like in other? No, only in the US you've shown them. Yeah, I was wondering what would be the reception or how would people read these works outside of the US? I mean, specifically, how would people read them in Mexico themselves? But that's just an open question. I wasn't sure if you show them in Mexico. So yeah, let's since we're getting kind of to part for your questions, I want to make sure we talk about this work, which is your most recent work, kind of COVID work called Convictions. So yes, tell us about it.
Yeah, so basically it's a current performance I have been doing for over a year now, referencing my grandfather's legacy. No, so he was adopted, and his adopted father was the one who encouraged him to study art and music. There was only education in his town till 3rd grade, so he was basically my biggest influence, or to start thinking of art, no, or looking at art or portraits and landscapes, and often religious copies of paintings he would make, no. And so, yeah, basically, during the 1920s and 30s, he was a taxi driver, no? And during the 1926 to the 1929, there was a war in Mexico called the Cristero War, no? In which, yeah, there it is, in which about 250,000 people died between militia, the Cristeros, which was this armed group that were believers of Christianity. No, basically the president at the time wanted to get rid of Catholicism, and as you can see, they were killing a lot of priests, nuns, and also a lot of believers. No, so my grandfather would use his cab in order to transport priests for free between their hiding locations to underground mass services. So since COVID started, museums, galleries, art spaces have been closed. So I started making this performance, no, that it gets activated. Only a few times I have had artwork present, because it's hard when you have several people in the car, but it always has music, like I have met different composers during residencies or people I have done collaborations with. So even people who activate the piece or not, they are able to listen to this project. So DePaul also has donated a few catalogs for the first part of this performance. I also have been giving my own catalogs to people. So people who activate the piece, instead of giving them free rides to this underground mass services, I give them for free these catalogs. So many of this money I will make from the share ride apps that I work for goes back to pay for this artist books. So I mean, I've been also applying for different fellowships and grants, hoping to continue with this project. I'm not gonna end it once COVID ends, which seems to be soon. I mean, COVID in terms of wearing a mask and different things. I'm gonna continue. And I mean, just funny enough, I just reached 1,100 trips if you put together these two. And I mean, as you can see, I pick up any person, and I don't cancel on people. So this performance happens anywhere in the city, but also in any neighborhood, or heading to any neighborhood. So it's not only focused into a specific group of people that always attend to art spaces or things, and even people sometimes leave comments like this one that I think they're amazing. Sometimes people made other comments at the end of their ride. I have people who have even cried and felt like super connected to this. And so that has been amazing. I have also made an installation like this with an electronic frame that shows the images I just showed you on this part. I mean, I just started this Instagram account. It has, I think, 2 followers, and so I decided.
I didn't know about that.
I mean, I decided that today was a perfect moment to make it public, because for the last year, this project has only existed in either in word of mouth or the memory of people who experienced it. So now that we sort of see an end to the stay-at-home order, by July 4th, I think this is a good moment for me to start thinking of the second part of the project, in which it'll be more obvious, more evident what has happened. And of course, having, I mean, now it's also on my website, the connection to this project and the photos and explanation I just gave you, and even further details.
That's great. Yeah, I'm gonna start following convictions projects. But we didn't get any questions yet, but maybe they will still come. I have 2 other questions. I think these were convictions relate. It's. Would you say it's educational? I mean, I think there's a big component of education there, and so I was curious to hear, since you've been teaching now for a while, and I think you take that very seriously, and your students admire you, if you can speak about the teaching part. I don't know if you're teaching now at Hyde Park Art Center in Chicago, but yeah, just speak to that a little.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy sharing or critiquing my students. I mean, sharing whatever technical knowledge I have or other projects, or how to make different pieces or series of work. But I mean, I have tried to teach like a couple of days a week. I have not tried to teach like every day or most of my time. but I mean, I feel like it's important, no? Since I finished undergrad, that I was 20 years old, I started teaching undergrad at the same time as well. So I have always tried to keep teaching and have that interaction, no? I think I was very lucky to have really good professors and advisors, undergrad, grad school, or outside of school. So I feel like that's a really good way to keep, you know, like keeping it in a circle, no, of what you learn, what you share, and what you learn from students as well, no. So definitely a lot of my work makes those connections to historical moments. In many ways, I have these critiques of you know, like it's more like a way of teaching. I don't try to see it that way. It's more like referencing these historical moments, no, and how us as humans keep repeating the same thing. I mean, with different names of people who do these things, or I mean, for good and for bad reasons, no. So it's more like thinking of those connections.
Yeah, I'm glad that in your response to this question, you mentioned the sort of references to historical works and art history and other artists as also part of like your educational interest. And I have a last question, which is maybe a tricky one, but just to leave us thinking. So you're part of LatinXAmerican, which includes Latinx artists. So I wanted to ask you, how does it feel to be part of an exhibition with other Latinx artists? You also are part and have been part of the board, you know, as an artist, representing artists in the DPAM's board, you know, also advocating for Latinx artists. So perhaps you can talk about these if you feel like it, and also mention the Alcahuete Social Club, which is a platform for professional Latinx creatives, you know, people in the arts that are in Chicago, which is a great space. It has been a great space that you had initiated for social gatherings.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think you explained very, very well all those things. I mean, especially alcahuetes, no? I mean, me and Fabiola Ramirez were talking once and seeing this lack of, you know, like brotherhood kind of thing between Latin uh, uh, descendant countries or immigrants from different Latin countries. So we just thought we should do something, because people complain about it, but nobody did anything, no. So seeing this exhibition happening, and a lot of the people in the show who have been at our gatherings, but also other people who don't live in Chicago, but we are familiar with their work and things. I think that's a fabulous idea that I mean, Julie Rodriguez started, no, and you guys are working amazingly in DePaul Art Museum. I think this is something that, I mean, I know it's going to continue. There's not just the show and that's the end, right? So the initiative is going to continue, and I feel like this experience is going to connect even a lot more people. So we're really excited to be part of it, and I don't know if
Yeah, it would be great to host an Alcahuetes meeting at them when
exactly. Yeah, we're excited for that, and also to say, I mean, happy but sadly to say goodbye to the board.
Yes, but you will always be a part of the family.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Rodrigo. This was amazing. I learned much more speaking with you. And Adia, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, thank you so much to you both. A massive thank you, Ionit and Rodrigo, and your generosity in sharing your practice with us, your artwork with us tonight. Thank you so much. And of course, to everyone who took a minute to tune in, thank you to you all as well. A little reminder that DePaul Art Museum's exhibition is currently on view and they're open, so you can go see it. And we are also open at 21C with our exhibition, This We Believe. So please stay in touch with both institutions. And again, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight for Curator Conversations. And again, thank you to Ionit and Rodrigo as well.
Thank you, Adia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.